What I'd like to do now is add some controls to my user form. So I click on my user form, and the first control I want to add is a label. When I look in my toolbox, I can see a button that looks like a capital A. When I click this button and then click on my user form, I've created a label. What I'd then like to do is give the label a caption saying date. So here in my properties window, I can change the caption label 1 to say date. When I press enter, the word date appears on my label, on my user form. What I'd now like to do is add a text box to the right of the label. So I click on my user form so I can see my toolbox, and I use this button here called text box. When I click this button and then I click to the right of date, I've created a text box. And what I'd like to do is use the properties window to give this text box a name, TXT date. TXT is a standard that's used to indicate that this is a text box as opposed to some of the other types of controls. And I'll press enter. I'd now like to create another label, so I click on my user form and I hit my capital A button called label, and I'm going to click about here. This one I'd like to give the caption, so I go to the captions property in my properties window. Instead of label 2, I'll call this one actual. In fact, actual value. And press enter. And here's my label actual value. I'll then click on my user form, and this time I'll click the text box control and click to the right of my label actual value, and using my properties window I'll name this particular text box TXT actual and enter. So what I've done is I've created two labels, one's called date, one's called actual value, and I've created two text boxes, one called TXT date and one called TXT actual. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to create some combo boxes. First of all, I'll create a label. So using my label button in my toolbox, I'll click, I'll come up to the user form just below date, and I'll click, and I'll give it the caption, instead of label 3, I'll give it the caption person, and enter. And here's my label person. Now to the right of person, I'd like to put a combo box. So I click on my user form, and in my toolbox, this particular button here is called a combo box. I'll click on the combo box button, and I'll click to the right of the label called person. What I'd like to do is use the properties window to give this a name, and I'll call it CBO, which is the convention for combo box, CBO person. One word, and enter. What I'd then like to do is create another label, so I'll click on my user form, I'll click on my label control, and below person I'll click, and I'll give it the caption region, and press enter. To the right of region, I'd like to insert a combo box, so I click on my user form, and in my toolbox I click the combo box button. And to the right of region I click again, and this time I'm going to name this combo box CBO region, and enter. So we've just created a further two labels and two combo boxes. You can move these up and down just by using the arrow keys on your keyboard. Actually, I'll probably use my mouse, just so that they're sort of nicely positioned. And that'll do there. What I'd now like to do is create a frame. When I go down to my toolbox, there's this button here called frame, and it's got a little XYZ. I'll click on this particular control, and I'll click to the right about here. I can then resize my frame and resize my form, so I'll click on the form and make it slightly wider, so I can grab the right edge of my frame and bring it in a little bit, and just resize things accordingly. When I click back on my frame, I'd like to give my frame a caption. So in my properties window, instead of calling it frame 1, I'm going to call it title, and enter. And here I can see the title caption showing. Inside of my frame, I'd like to add 3 option buttons. So I'll click on my user form, and in my toolbox I can see this button here called an option button. I'll click on this particular option button, and then I'll click inside of my frame. What I'd then like to do is go to the properties window and give this particular option button a name. So I'll click on the name property. I'd like to give it the name opt, which is short for option button, Opt Owner, and press Enter. I'd also like to give it a caption, so I'll replace Option Button 1 with the Caption Owner. And you can see the caption appearing. So the caption is actually the name that's associated to a control, well, the label that's associated to a control, and the name is what it's actually called. I'm going to add another option button. So I'll go back to my toolbox, click on my option button, click inside of my frame about here. I'll give it a name, Opt Rep, and I'll give it a caption, Rep. And I'd like to add a third option button. So I click on my user form, go back to my toolbox, click on the option button, click inside of the frame, and this one I'd like to name Opt Admin and give it the caption Admin. Alright, now in addition to these controls, I'd like to add 2 command buttons. One command button for OK and one command button for cancel. When I go back to my toolbox, this button here is a command button, and I'm going to click here and then I'm going to click on my form. What I'd like to do then is give it a name, and so I'm going to click in the properties window and name it CMD, which is short for command, and OK. I'd also like to give it a caption that just says OK. And I'd like to add another command button, so I'll go back to my toolbox, click on command button, click to the right of OK, and this one I'll name CMD Cancel and give it a caption Cancel. And those are the controls I'd like to add to my form. Given that I've added all the controls, I might actually reduce the height of the form so it looks a little bit tidier. So here's my form here. What I'd also like to do is save this form. So in my Visual Basic Editor, I'm just going to hit the Save command in my toolbar and save what I've done so far.